Hi again. Nelson Barbour is going into the details of the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25, the first verses of Matthew 25. He says, the force of the present application of the 10 virgins will be seen by every reader, I think, when the details are all brought out. The subject of this parable is the continuation of the subject of Matthew 24, the division of the chapters being only the work of the printer. In Matthew 24, a connected prophecy from the first to the second advent is given, and of course embracing more or less of the events associated with the destruction of Jerusalem. But we shall not give a detailed application of this chapter, our object being merely to show the locality of the parable with which the next chapter opens. After a reference to the wars and great time of trouble on the church, such as never was before or should be again, he gives the signs which are to precede his advent, such as the darkening of the sun, falling of the stars, distress of nations with perplexity, etc. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, according to verse 29. In another place we have given the reasons for believing that this tribulation under the abomination that was to make desolate refers to the persecutions under the papal church, and which almost entirely ended during the 18th century. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. Of course, they've now abandoned this idea completely. Barbour goes on, this has been applied to the dark day of May 19th, 1780, which has been perhaps nearly passed out of the memory of most of those now living, but was a household word 50 years ago. And the stars shall fall from heaven. This was fulfilled in November 1833, the peculiarity of which will still be in the memory of some of my readers. And the powers of the heavens shall be shaken, we understand to be in the immediate future, and that it refers to the governments of the earth. Then follows the declaration, so likewise ye, the church, when ye shall see these things, know that it, or he, is near. Verily I say unto you, this generation who see these things shall not pass away till all these things be fulfilled. Matthew 24:33. I'm not explaining this chapter to meet criticism, but simply showing the view we entertain of these events which lead to the subject of this article. The 24th chapter having brought us down to the last generation, the one that was to see the signs and upon which the end was coming, he says, then, that is, at that time, shall the kingdom of heaven, the church, be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. The lamp is the Bible. Thy word is a lamp to my feet. In the Advent movement of the present century, and which culminated in 1843 to 44, there's been such a searching of the scriptures as never has been known in any other generation. This might to some extent be accounted for from the fact that other generations have not had the Bible as a household book. But the accounting for this, or for the darkening of the sun or falling of the stars, has no bearing on their application. The question is, have the facts met the conditions of the prophecy? Has there been, during this generation who have seen these signs, a movement of this kind? Everyone is more or less familiar with the history of the Advent or Miller movement, as it is called. That there was a wonderful searching of the scriptures on this particular subject, a going out to meet the bridegroom, followed by disappointment, confusion, and fanaticism. This much at least will be admitted by all, whether friends or enemies of that movement. And this is all the parable from the 1st to the 5th verse demands: a going out to meet him, a disappointment, for the bridegroom tarries, followed by a time in which they all slumber and sleep, or were in darkness. And this very movement, and the disappointment which has followed, brought such reproach on the subject of the second advent of Christ, that the bare mentioning of it is received with cold disapproval in almost every church in the land. And while the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamp are gone out. I wonder who the foolish and the wise will be. And that'll be in the next segment. Put in a link to what F.F. Bruce had to say about this generation that would not pass away, and also to the playlist where we take up the works of specifically C.T. Russell and J.F. Rutherford in detail. Have Jehovah's Witnesses ever been God's organization?